ahead and get started. Welcome to Neighborhood Services Committee, and we'll start with Tony with a roll call.
Esparza. I'm going to come back. I know she's muted. I know she's here. Foley.
Here.
Jimenez. Carrasco. Arenas.
Here.
Esparza.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And as I said, welcome. This is our second meeting during COVID times. And so we are learning as we go to conduct our committees as well as we can. And so I want to thank all the staff. And if you're joining us in our community, please let us know. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Tony, our city clerk, is on hand to help out. And happy second NSC meeting. All right, so we don't have anything on our review of work plan, but we do have something on our consent. So I'm open to a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
I'm sorry. I need to roll call consent.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Esparza.
Yes.
Foley.
Aye.
And Arenas.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we're going to begin with reports to the committee, and we're going to start with the Police Athletic League update that we've been looking forward to. So John, I believe you're part of that presentation, correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair. John Cicerelli, I'm Director of Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services. With me today is Avi Otam. He is the Acting Deputy Director for Parks, under which the division under which this particular site falls. And then Shannon Heimer, a newly appointed division manager. And her responsibilities within that division, in the Parks division, are destination and events. And PAL certainly fits into that category, so she'll be going forward helping to manage that site and the program. And so what we're hoping to get today from you is some input and any feedback you may have on what we're proposing as the model going forward for managing this site. And with that input, what we would then do is come back to council. I believe we're targeting November, if I remember right, but Avi can correct me if I'm wrong. And then in front of full council, with your input to lay out, okay, here's the final deal points. Now we'll go negotiate, execute, and finalize. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Avi and Shannon to walk through the presentation, and then we're happy to answer any questions or take any feedback you have. Avi?
Thank you, John. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Avi Otam, Acting Deputy Director of the Parks Division, and thank you for having us today for an update on our efforts regarding PAL. As John mentioned, I think we were in front of the committee back in February, and we presented a few alternatives for what the model for PAL could look like going forward. And the committee accepted staff's recommendation for a hybrid model, which Shannon will describe shortly. And the committee also provided some further feedback around the development of a multi-year strategic plan and building governance and board development for the PAL nonprofit as part of our work. So I'd like to give a little bit of an update on what's happened since February, and then we'll turn it over to Shannon for what's in front of us. So I don't need to say it because we've all known it and we've lived it. A lot has changed since February of 2020. And most importantly for the entire world, the coronavirus pandemic and shelter in place, which began in middle of March. And PAL, as with many of our facilities, closed at that point as a community serving facility. As our organization really diverted towards essential services and emergency operations center directed efforts, a lot of our work around PAL was put on pause and definitely slowed down, but we have begun resuming our conversations with the PAL nonprofit and among staff about the future of the facility. Importantly, we've also reorganized our Parks Division, as John mentioned at City Council last week, to create a little bit more focus between our teams working on park maintenance and our teams under Shannon's leadership in a new unit called Destinations, Events, and Sports, which creates a little bit more focus around our management and upkeep of sports fields, such as PAL and the PAL facility. Shannon, if you can click to the next slide. Over the last few months, staff in partnership with the nonprofit has also taken a keen eye to where the PAL facility can be a community resource during shelter in place and these incredibly challenging times. And as the committee knows, PAL was the site of a COVID testing facility in partnership with Verily for the better part of 3 months, and hosted a very successful food distribution event with the TAP Foundation and the 49er wide receiver, Kendrick Bourne, and thank you, Councilmember Foley, for helping us connect to that opportunity. And as we've been looking forward, our team, and in partnership with PAL, has been brainstorming more ways where the PAL facility, the PAL Stadium facility, can be a community asset, such as, and these are by way of example, planning for ways that we could have movie nights, drive-in movie nights, or other community events, obviously in compliance with our county and state health orders. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Shannon Heimer, Division Manager.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. From here, I'm trying to move the slide. Managing my slides are not, there we go. I want to talk a little bit about the hybrid model that we will have. What we're organizing with the PAL nonprofit is that PRNS will be the key and lead operator. The city will be on the PAL Board of Directors. PAL will be the program partner, fundraiser, and community connections, engaging for fundraising and sponsorship. PRNS will provide maintenance and limited financial support. PRNS and PAL will collaborate to offer complementary programming, and PRNS and PAL will partner with the police department for participation in all programming, events, and activities. We've been very fortunate to be working with Captain Jason Taw, who's extremely enthusiastic. He is up to date on the types of programming that we're looking to do in the future, and until we have a schedule and a calendar and can move forward in that way, he will then, PD is ready to recruit officers and have their participation in all of our activities. To give more explanation of the roles of the hybrid model, PAL will conduct community relations, fundraising, and sponsors. They'll be the primary contact for PD coordination. The PAL nonprofit will program league and tournament use of the field and operate the Taekwondo and gym programs. They'll operate the concession stands and do daily minor facility maintenance. PRNS staff will provide support to programs and board development. PRNS will program sports classes, events, camps, community events, and activities. We've talked about everything from even a chess club to homework club, and there's a lot of excitement building around the variety of activities and ways that PAL can support the neighborhood and community. PRNS staff will coordinate with additional food vendors and nonprofit partners, conduct daily field maintenance, and manage major capital projects. The objectives are to rebuild the PAL board, establish new bylaws and standards, implement additional PRNS sports and recreation programming and events, partner with PD to provide officer participation, and again, they're very, very enthusiastic and excited about being involved either as coaches or dropping into the homework club or being available and participating in any way that we can in all those programs. And we're working on establishing joint work plans for programs, facility projects, and facility use. Challenges have been the closures to COVID-19, the minimal opportunity to operate programming and coordinate with PD. Major capital projects are on hold right now due to essential construction needs, but we're working on the model, we're working through the details, and we are moving forward. Next steps are to review the plan and the expected terms with council later this fall, 2020. We're also now working on revising the contract with the PAL nonprofit to reflect this new hybrid model and the changes. And then we'll present again to NSC committee in the winter of 2021. There are many exciting opportunities for sports and community events at the facility. PAL's nonprofit and PRNS staff are all very excited to be working on this model and getting into the details now of what that will look like. And we'll be real excited when we can have youth and families back on the site as well. So thank you for allowing us to give you the update, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you, Shannon, and congratulations on your new assignment. We're very excited to have you. All right, so I am going to look to my council colleagues to see if anybody has questions. There we go. Councilmember Sparsa.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the PRNS team for all their hard work. There had been a lot of work that took place before COVID, and then in recent months we've had Shannon and Avi come on board, and with that have seen a lot of headway in the operations of PAL and the investment that the city is making. So I just wanted to thank you. I know it's taken a lot of work, and there's a vision that we all have where PAL is a jewel once again in the community, and that a lot of local kids will use that jewel. And I think the hybrid model is really a model that incorporates the expertise and knowledge of the city and that brings the whole city behind it, with having a community-based organization to be that base in the community to work on those innovative fundraising practices that we know that we need and that we want to increase that visibility and partnership in the immediate community, because PAL is an East Side jewel. And so I wanted to also ask, do we know if anybody from PAL is here?
We did
see
invite
them.
Joe. We did invite Joe, but I'm not seeing him in the attendees. I was noticing that as well. The executive director / president. I think you're all familiar with him from previous meetings.
Yes, and so I wanted to, and also I'm remiss if I didn't thank my colleagues, council members Arenas and Carrasco, for leading the efforts that brought us to this point where we can really reimagine PAL. And so I also wanted to ask, in terms of our relationship with PAL, I had some questions around us, where we are in establishing a joint work plan. The joint work plan is for programs and facilities projects, but in the past we have talked about a strategic plan with PAL, a multi-year strategic plan that incorporates funding targets along those multi-year plans, so that we make commitments, but PAL also makes commitments around their fundraising for multi-year, so that the city can sort of make those investments early and then wean those investments as PAL becomes stronger as a board. Where are we in those discussions?
I'll let Shannon comment on how far she's gone with any of this, but I'll preface it with this. We have money to do a master plan for the PAL site. And so I think in the short term, we can have short goals and objectives, but the longer term strategic plan, I think, is going to rely in part on what we develop through that master plan process with the community and PAL and our partners. That'll give us a better flavor of sort of what's the long-term plan and how would the site change, or the use of the site change, and those sorts of things. Shannon, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I'll add that we've been focusing on board development, understand the board and where we're going. We've talked a lot about having to figure out what those details look like for sharing the facility and what complementary programming would look like. And now that we have a foundation of what that looks like, we have talked about a 3-year work plan together. And so we're at the beginning of defining what that looks like and establishing it. And it also includes evaluating every year, how is this progressing? How is this working? So we are working towards that, but we're at the beginning stages of it.
Okay, and that would have targets for PAL as well as commitments from the city, because I think that's fair, right? If the city makes certain commitments, then PAL should be expected to make certain commitments and targets so that we can work towards our common goal of really building a financially sustainable and community-facing PAL facility.
Yeah,
And so,
if I can add, some of that performance and those metrics, we will incorporate into the actual agreement that we establish with them, sort of milestones or things that we want them to accomplish as a board, to be able to be a responsive partner or even a good partner, right? So some of that we'll be able to address there as well.
and what's our target for the agreement?
Well, we should be back, like I was saying, November, give or take, in front of the full council with any extra input you've given us today. And then we'll lay it out so you'll have a very clear picture of what all those deal points are. And then last bit of comment, let us know what you want, and then we'll go negotiate and execute.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Carrasco.
Hi, thank you. Let me see. There I am. Thank you. And thank you so much. You know, I can't seem to get, give me a second. I'm trying to collapse. Never mind, whatever. Okay. So thanks so much. PAL is Councilmember Esparza said, it's a hidden jewel. And I know for those who kind of drive by it, go, what? That's a hidden jewel? It is. And we just need to give it a bit of TLC, clean it up, and love it for what it's been and it could be. Really re-envision the potential that PAL is. But so I'm going to go on my little soapbox again, and I know that everyone has heard it. So just be patient with me, if you will. For those who haven't heard it, you're in for a treat. But Angel has heard it since the moment that I came into office, and I have him in my office for much longer than I'm sure he expected to be in there. But you know, if you have money to do a master plan, this is the ask that I would have. That I know that we're trying to see what we are going to do and how we're going to envision what kind of feedback we're going to get. Remember, when you look at older communities such as the east side of San Jose, older communities mean also that it has a lot of historic significance for the city of San Jose. And so, of course, east side is home to a lot of history, and it's very significant as it sits in the overall picture of San Jose. And a lot of people don't know that. And so I'm going to give you just a little taste of what east side represents for San Jose, because it's rarely ever highlighted in our literature. It's rarely ever plastered out there in our social media platforms. And so whenever I get an opportunity to do so, I like to do so. But just a few blocks, maybe a quarter of a mile down from PAL Stadium, the home of the Chavez family lives there. And there's this tiny little...
Maybe you could turn off your video because you're breaking up.
Am I?
Yeah.
You muted. Unmute, there you go.
Then you don't get the exciting facial expressions. Okay. So just a few, is that better or no? Maybe? Okay, so
It's a lot better.
It is a lot better because you don't see me, huh? Okay, so just a few, I got it. So just a few of like a quarter of a mile, half a mile down from PAL is Cesar Chavez's home. His family still lives there. And there's just a tiny little plaque. Nobody would ever know. It's so unassuming. But to think that we had an iconic figure who just a few days ago, we celebrated one of the most historic and probably the most important strikes in American history. And the leader of that strike is homegrown and lived just within our community, Cesar Chavez. And up from Pal Stadium is Guadalupe Church. And that is home to the largest Mexican and Latino Catholic congregation, which, by the way, was a stop for Kennedy, who met with Cesar Chavez, because he drew such accolades from individuals like Martin Luther King and Kennedy, because it was such a significant and impactful strike because it was nonviolent. And he was able to move not just San Jose, not just California, but the entire world, and drew attention to the plight of the farm workers. And we're seeing it now, that it's taken a pandemic, not a little farm worker like Cesar Chavez, but a pandemic to suddenly draw attention again to the farm workers and what they bring to us, as we love our organic little juices when we do a cleanse once a year. So, you know, Pal sits in the middle of East Side. It's right next to Emma Prush Park, and Angel can give us a little bit of history regarding that. But when the family died, she bequested, she left this beautiful working farm to the city of San Jose. Good friends with another woman just across the way who left beautiful Overfell Gardens, which is also a little underinvested, but very, that's been kept up just by volunteers almost. And so when we think of master planning, I love us for really to look at all the historical place-making opportunities that we have and how we envision all these different corridors and how we connect the dots for people. By the way, let's not forget famous King and Story. I know that I keep saying it, lowriders were birthed in LA, but we gave it the international platform that it is, and all the way into Japan and China and all the beautiful Asian countries that love our lowriders. They gave it the international platform that it has now. And so the lowrider movement, and it was a movement, and it's coming back, by the way, folks, was really highlighted and given its fame and glory by a lowrider magazine that was birthed here in San Jose, that was really highlighted on King and Story. And so we should have, again, place-making opportunities. And what is that called? Whatever it's called, where you, what is it? You all techies know what I'm talking about, when you can find it in geo-finding or whatever it is. And so
Geocaching.
that's what it is. And so I didn't know this, but just again, 2 blocks down from Pal Stadium is a very well-known little teeny weeny skateboarding park. And the reason why it's so famous is why, Mr. Angel Rios? Who skates there?
A lot of famous, well, there's been multiple famous skateboarders.
Yep, multiple famous skateboarders, including our very own homegrown, birthed and raised on the east side of San Jose, a gentleman that my son was following way before I even got into council. Suddenly, when I was inducted into the East Side Hall of Fame, my children were so excited to get there. I thought it was all because of me. Nope, it was because Mr. Rojas was being inducted, and there's no pictures of me with my children. It's all pictures of the skateboarders. So anyway, so there's just so much history, and there's so much to be proud of. And when you have a community that has been underinvested, and where children have really had all these struggles, we need to make sure that we remind them of what many things they have to be proud of. And we have an obligation as a city and city leaders, whether you're representing the east side, the west side, the south side, central side, beautiful Almaden Valley, Cambrian, Willow Glen, to always make sure that we let our children know that every side of the town has something to be proud of. And of course, the East Side, because of its rich, diverse history, has so much to be proud of. And if we're going to invest in PAL, and I know that we will, because I know that in other areas, we are making way for sports complexes, and private companies are doing the same, that we have an opportunity to revive PAL, to bring it back to what it used to be, and I think even more so, but we need to tie in all of these other pieces that I think go hand in hand with what PAL is. And so to be able to do so, I think brings about a wealth and a richness that isn't just about PAL, but it's about how PAL fits into this bigger puzzle. It's like adding depth of flavors to a stew. It's not just something that's flat and, it's not just salt and pepper, but it's all the other rich flavors that we're going to add to it. And I think that with Emma Push Park, with Guadalupe Church, with Moxa that's right there, that is just begging for us to come in and give it a fresh coat of paint, with the skateboard park, with the history that Cesar Chavez and the legacy that he left us, with having Kennedy been there, and all of the other history that I can go on and on and on. And all our leaders that have been birthed from the East Side, I think that we just have a lot to work with, and it's begging us to jump in there and really bring it to life. By the way, I also just want to mention that that across the street is Rancho Golf, and whatever it is that we do to encourage children to have a very active life, children and adults, at PAL, at Emma Push Park, at Rancho Golf, and at the skateboard park, I think that we are in a position to be able to do so. So with that, thank you so much. Shannon, welcome. What an exciting project. I just gave you a whole bunch of stuff, and I hope that we're all gonna just really run with it. So thank you so much. By the way, the last thing I just wanna add, Chair, in terms of this hybrid model, what I didn't see here, and I'm hoping to see here, and Councilmember Esparza mentioned it, so I'm gonna echo it. I'd really like to see not just a multi-year plan, but really goals and matrix. In other words, our board needs to have very, in order to be able to set them up for success, is what are the specific goals? So if their role is in fundraising, for example, what is the goal on a quarterly basis that we have in terms of an expectation, goal set up for fundraising? In other boards that I've sat on, we've had goals, it's $250,000 a year that we expected to raise for nonprofit organizations in order to keep the lights on, in order to keep the fields green. What is it? And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that number is, because I don't know what it's going to take to bring low cost and free programming to our most deserving children. But we should be looking at a budget that is not just dependent on the city, but is also supplemented and run by the board that is going to be instrumental in making sure that we get the programming up and running and is available to all our deserving children. So I think that we need to set very concrete goals and a matrix that we check in, not on a yearly basis at NSC, but I think we should come back on a quarterly basis so that we can have some sort of oversight to the achievement of these goals.
Great suggestion, Councilmember Carrasco. So when we call for a motion, I hope that my colleagues can consider that in the motion for reports back to NSC regarding that milestone matrix that you're referring to, and that will go in the agreement that John mentioned earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Esparza, did you have a question once? I saw your, okay, wonderful. All right, if there are no more questions, I am just going to ask, I'm actually really grateful to all the questions that have already been asked, very thorough. My colleagues do a wonderful job in ensuring that we think ahead of our particular and respective communities and what they've been asking us to do. And so thank you for all the questions. They kind of asked them already for me. The only one that I didn't catch was what was the master plan process? I'm really glad to see that we have the master plan funding, because master plans alone are just really, it's a hefty lift. And if we don't have that, we can't begin a real process with our community. And so I'm really glad that the funding is there. What is that process? What does the timeline look like for the master plan?
Yeah, I don't have that at the tip of my fingers. I do see, though, our deputy Nicole Burnham is on the call, and typically the capital team runs the master planning process. So I don't know if you have anything you can add, Nicole, or share.
Sure. Yeah, we did start looking at it at this project in the spring, and then got waylaid through pandemic. But our approach, and we've heard, Councilmember Carrasco's interest before, in that, she has expressed interest in for having this master plan be a little more holistic than normal. And kind of taking in more, acknowledging more deeply the context of the area. So that's definitely part of our plan. But our plan is to, we develop base mapping and just get good information about the site, evaluate the condition of existing facilities, and then we'll do community meetings. Usually we do 3. The first one is just sort of engaging the community around the site and what's there. This site also has the need to acknowledge and honor Prush Farm Park, right? And the dynamic between those 2 spaces as well. So we'll seek out to do community engagement. Our initial meeting is just kind of fact finding and gathering information about what people would want to see. Then the consultants will go and develop a couple of different scenarios and layouts and ideas of what we might want to do with the space. And then we'll come back to the community with those concepts and get feedback. And then they'll take those, the feedback from the multiple concepts and kind of meld them into one. And then the third meeting is usually a Parks and Rec Commission meeting where we would seek to have them accept the master plan. And I currently don't have a schedule for that. I'm so sorry. I'm actually slated at the end of this month to go through projects with my team and sort of set our priorities for the next 6 months. So I'll know more in the future, within a month, on where that's going to fall in our work plan for this year.
So maybe we can update you on that when we come back to with the council item. We can just let we'll just add that in real quick as a piece of information.
Wonderful. And I know that right now we are challenged in connecting with our communities, especially our hard to reach communities. And so I know that I don't know that we are asking for it right away during COVID to have that engagement process begin. Certainly you have already, the steps that are part of the master planning, and fact finding, I'm guessing is going to take you some time. Hopefully it'll match up with the time frame where we're all able to connect with each other at some point or another. Otherwise, I think a really good source is always the schools, because they are constantly connecting with us parents, telling us, don't forget to Zoom this and don't forget the blah, blah, blah. And so you have our attention in terms of parents, but I know that's larger community that has a long-term interest in this gem, as it has been referred to, because I think it is. It's a gem in our own backyard. So I would just love it if you could include us at one way or another, so that we can also encourage our communities to give their input into the master planner, just to give them a heads up. Hey, look out in your email, something's coming, or you're going to have an invitation. It would be really wonderful to include that, so we can make sure those voices are heard. So those are my questions. I really appreciate you outlining the process. The only other question I have is what is the status in terms of the board Are they finding themselves, I know it's a hybrid, we made that recommendation, and is the process proving to be a lot smoother now? Are they finding their place with this new hybrid? If you can just give us a little bit of that insight into the board, because I know we've had concerns, obviously, from the past. So I just want to make sure that, that we're on the right path in terms of, if we need to modify anything that we know about it now. So if there's any recommendations on your behalf, John, or your staff's behalf, it would be great to hear it now.
Sure, yeah, and Shannon's been meeting with them with some regularity, so Shannon, feel free to fill in any blanks, but I would summarize the board right now as in flux. There have been some changes. I wouldn't say they're operating in an optimal way. And some of those very goals that we were talking about earlier, that we're going to incorporate as part of their contract, are going to try to address those issues with them. I think they're good with the model itself. There's probably, I'm sure they would love us to support them financially more than we are, or than we are planning to. But right now, just given the state the city is in, this was at least a factor in us. You know what? We're just going to be in the lead here for this, because right now we're just not in a position to be handing away a bunch of money to them at this point. The idea is to get them to be able to raise enough money to support themselves ultimately, right? That's the idea. So I wouldn't say they're in the best space, but I think they're okay with what we've come up with. But their functionality is more questionable. Shannon, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'll add that we've had some very open and frank conversations about the steps that need to be taken and improvements and changes, and that they're on board with understanding that these need to take place. And so we're right at the beginning of understanding that there's a lot of building to be done here, and understanding that it's going to be contractually reflected in the contract as well as in our bylaws. And they're ready to do the work to move forward and do just that.
Great. I appreciate it. I know that there's been a lot of emergencies that are taken away from our focus, and I'm expecting that this is going to take some time, but it's better to work out those kinks now and shape it for as much success as we can. And so I'm grateful for that. And Councilmember Esparza.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in because I'm the PAL liaison, and so I agree with John and Shannon's assessment. I think it took a lot of listening and back and forth to get to a mutual understanding that where we are at this point, and then the details, including targets for the board, bylaws for the board, best practices. Those would be developed in the city's agreement with PAL. And so it took a lot of work to kind of get to this point, but that, in my opinion, that work is by no means over. In fact, it's just kind of starting, because now we all agree that yes, that needs to get done, and that work will be incorporated in the next step of this plan. So I hope that helps.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And we're a little bit out of order here. I apologize to our public who's been waiting to provide comments. Mr. Beekman, your hand is raised. Are you interested in providing comment?
Hi, sorry, it took a while to unmute that. I found it and here I am. Yeah, I would like to comment on this item. Councilperson Carrasco offered such nice words that it just inspired me to want to offer my own public comment at this time. Thank you. It's my feeling that I haven't been clear exactly the story of Cesar Chavez in San Jose lately. I know he had grown up here, and I know his house is somewhere. His old house used to be off somewhere off Jackson, I think. And I know Dolores Huerta had done some really important initial community activism work in San Jose. That's where she learned her good skills and practices. And that's vitally important. And for you to explain, I think Robert Kennedy went to the church. I can't remember, over on San Antonio, I think. I can't remember its name, but those kind of reminders. I know it's been kind of a tough issue in San Jose trying to define Cesar Chavez, and I felt Councilperson Carrasco gave it a nice feeling and energy. I mean, I've learned really important activist skills of Dolores Huerta and her initial work in San Jose. And so how does that be respected, and it's important to me. So thank you. And with 30 seconds, I wanted to ask about, is there a way that, how can, the SRO programs, they're the school systems, we're slowly trying to end, policing of schools. The police want to be a part of the community some way. Is the PAL kind of stuff, is that the answer? Sports leagues, and that's just a question to think about, as I hope we're slowly learning to ask to end the SRO programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beekman. Going back to the committee, time for motion time.
So moved with Councilmember Carrasco's amendment regarding the milestone agreement and master plan. Did I?
Quarterly updates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a quarterly update. Thank you.
To report back to NSC on a
Quarterly.
Is that what
Yes.
you intended? Councilwoman?
Absolutely. What she said.
Wonderful. We're collectively doing this.
Yes.
It's a village. It's a village.
And do we need to refer this to council in November? It just says accept, but do we need to refer this?
This doesn't need to be referred to council.
Okay.
But I did want to clarify the motion, because so the master plan, which is going to be primarily a capital master plan, that's going to be more down the road. So this additional direction around quarterly updates, is that in the context of more of the operational work that's going to be done short term in the more immediate future, or are we talking about the master plan? I just want to clarify the direction.
What I was hoping for, Angel, is an update once this hybrid model is put in place, that we in the agreement is solidified, that now we have a matrix with concrete goals and objectives, and that we get a quarterly update on that progress.
Got it. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Councilmember Carrasco. And was that seconded?
Yes, second. Thank you. Or Maya, or Councilmember Esparza.
Tony?
Your district, you can second it.
Thank you.
Esparza,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Arenas,
Aye.
Crosco, sorry.
Aye.
And you got Jimenez?
Don't forget about me, Tony.
Oh, you're there. Jimenez, I was looking for your name. I'm like, I still
I'm
need his
here.
name.
That's it. That's
Jimenez,
a big yes.
that's a 5-0 vote. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So moving along, we only have 2 items. This is our second item on our agenda today. This is the update on digital literacy and public technology initiatives. I know that there's a lot of work that was done during the summer and actually during the whole year. So, oh, there we are. Jill, wonderful. Welcome. And please take it away.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Arenas and members of the committee. As you said, I'm Jill Bourne, City Librarian, and it's my pleasure to be here today to introduce a cross-departmental team of truly fabulous, committed staff who lead the work of digital literacy programming and services and infrastructure across the library and Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services departments. Now, this has been an annual report to the committee, and I think last year was the first year that the library and PRNS actually did the report together. I think this joint effort reflects the ever-growing importance and priority of digital access, affordability, and adoption for our communities in so many aspects of life. And our recent experiences during the pandemic have shown that to be even more urgent. So there is a lot of content here. So the team will do our best to go through it succinctly, and then we'll all be here to answer any questions that you may have. And with that, I will turn it over to Samantha Kramer, who is the Manager of Education Programming Services at the library. Samantha?
Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon, council members. And thank you for having us here today to talk about all of our exciting work in the areas of digital literacy and public technology initiatives. Hap, you can go ahead to slide. So here we have a list of all of the initiatives that we'll be covering today. We will be going over the Coding 5K Challenge, the Wonder Workshop pilot, various device lending pilots, public computing, Wi-Fi, and technology upgrades, and a brief overview of the activities of the Digital Inclusion Branch of the Emergency Operations Center. Next slide. So as you are aware, my team runs many of SJPL's STEM programs and initiatives, including our Coding 5K and robotics work. Reflecting the city's commitment to increasing the availability of quality STEM and computer science programming, the Coding 5K Challenge is designed to increase access to coding-focused programs and deepen the quality of our programming through the use of expert volunteers and vetted curricula. Our original goal of the Coding 5K Challenge was to increase our capacity to serve 5,000 unduplicated students annually by the year 2020, which is a goal that we surpassed in 2019. The Coding 5K Challenge continued to provide these experiences to students even during the physical closure of the library this fiscal year. With the advent of COVID-19, staff were able to pivot the coding program to a virtual model, resulting in the achievements that you see on the slide. Even with the physical closure of the library, we were able to host 248 coding and robotics programs, either virtually or in person prior to the closure, serving a total of 4,478 students over the course of the year. We had a three-day Swift-based in-person boot camp in February before the closure, which served 21 students. We had over 400 coding volunteers that provided 908 hours of service. And overall, 68% of our students surveyed are excited to learn more about computer science, robotics, and coding in the future. I wanted to highlight a little bit about our eight summer camps. We have, as you know, most years done them in person. This year we were able to move very quickly to convert all 8 of our planned Coding 5K camps to a virtual setting, allowing students to continue to take advantage of the learning from a distance. We purchased browser-based software to allow students to log in from any device, and SJPL staff provided technology training to our certified K-12 teachers who were leading the programs, as well as providing on-call tech support during the camp activities. Campers were able to work in groups of 10 via Zoom to collaborate on coding and STEM projects, engage with educational guest speakers, and share their work with family and friends in an online space. We also piloted a socially distanced camp activity kit where parents and families could come to pick up bags with all the necessary STEM activity supplies. They were picked up a week prior to camp, ensuring that every camper was able to fully participate in all of the activities, regardless of economic status. We also, for one of our camps, piloted an iPad checkout program for our youngest campers, ages 5 to 7, enabling them to take full advantage of the program. And this pilot informed the development of some of our current checkout models and programs. Looking ahead at our Coding 5K program, this shift in service is reflective of the Coding 5K Challenge overall, which has expanded from virtual classes and workshops led by staff and volunteers to include online access to accredited software and curricula, where students can learn at their own pace and then also have drop-in office hours with volunteers and staff to help work through some of any difficulties they may have on their projects. All of this is available through SJPL's Coding 5K website for learners of all levels. Looking forward to fiscal year 2021, we will focus on virtual distance learning for Coding 5K programs with the intent to resume small group in-person learning when we can. We will continue to provide access to the Learn As You Go curricula and software. We plan to host multi-week coding and robotic courses led by expert volunteers, either virtually or in person as appropriate. We're looking at expanding the menu of available curricula and workshops to include a wider range of coding languages and some new age demographics, adding more to our middle and high school student curricula. We plan to pilot a Tech at Home coding program, which would include a checkout program for devices and Wi-Fi hotspots for learners for the duration of their coding class or club. We are looking into expanding the 3-day Swift boot camp series to 7 locations, either virtually or in person, depending on where we are in this new normal. And we will plan to work on promoting Coding 5K activities, challenges, and workshops, particularly to students, teachers, and families via our school district partnerships as a way to augment distance learning that's happening in schools. Next slide. So we are also going to give a brief update on the Wonder Workshops pilot today. The Wonder Workshop pilot was intended to be integrated into the existing Coding 5K structure, being implemented at SJPL and also at PRNS, and would have included working with branch staff, PRNS staff, and expert volunteers to recruit students from the community to participate in the programs. Both SJPL and PRNS staff participated in a 12-hour online training course via the Wonder Workshops website to learn more about the curricula and the technology. A train the trainer model was then created for staff and volunteers, as well as additional training to ensure procedural consistency and data collection across all city-run Coding 5K offerings. Both SJPL and PRNS plan to implement the program in spring of 2020. Unfortunately, the shelter-in-place order necessitated postponing the program. Staff has researched the possibility of converting and hosting virtual versions of the workshops. However, it was determined that Wonder Workshops do not really have the capacity to be transitioned to an online platform due to the necessity of physical proximity to the robots and other educational materials. New start dates of the workshops will be identified as soon as possible, and we are looking into ways that we could potentially roll that out through existing programs or partnerships as appropriate. Next slide. And so to talk a little bit about some of the other device checkout programs that I mentioned briefly earlier, acknowledging and addressing the digital divide in our community, SJPL has begun to pilot a laptop kit checkout program at several of our branch locations. Through grant funding from the Digital Inclusion Fund, SJPL has launched the program at 5 of our express pickup locations. The locations are Alum Rock, Hillview, Evergreen, Educational Park, and Tully. The program began on August 17th, 2020, and a total of 35 devices and paired hotspots are available to be checked out for 90 days with one auto renewal of 30 days available per user. These devices are available on a first come, first served basis for patrons that have been referred through existing SJPL programs that serve underconnected or unconnected households. Programs such as ESL groups, citizenship classes, and our career online high school program. As of this week, all of the devices have been checked out to families and students through this referral process. These devices feature pre-installed digital literacy presentations, information regarding internet service providers and affordable plans, as well as information about how to utilize SJPL resources in virtual programs. Patrons also receive a socially distanced 10-minute onboarding session when they check out the device. All curricula, instructions, and documents are available in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese. Though not a permanent solution to closing the digital divide, the lending pilot will allow families access to a device and the internet for up to 120 days and ensure that members of the household can access vital distance learning, job search, or telehealth tools. In this pilot program, the library will assess the efficacy of the lending model and determine what supports are most effective in promoting ongoing digital adoption for our residents. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Laura Buzo from Parks and Rec.
Good afternoon, Laura Buzo, Recreation Superintendent. Since September 2018, PRNS, with the support of the City Manager's Smart City team, became a partner in the AT&T Tech for Good pilot, one of the 3 equity projects of the Smart City Roadmap. The goal is to address the digital divide in our community by developing and implementing strategies to increase access to digital devices, internet services, and digital literacy programs. As a result, PRNS developed pilot digital inclusion activities made possible through the Digital Inclusion Fund and the AT&T Tech for Good grant. With a digital inclusion grant from the California Emerging Technology Fund, PRNS collaborated with 3 school districts, Campbell Union, Oak Grove, and Evergreen, to assist families with the enrollment process for affordable internet services. Over 3,000 households received information and resources on affordable internet services through social media, personal calls, and emails. In our continued commitment, PRNS staff are hosting 3 additional events in the surrounding communities of Franklin, McKinley, and Alum Rock School District at the end of September to assist additional families with the enrollment process for affordable internet services. Through the AT&T Tech for Good pilot and in partnership with Youth Connections Foundation, PRNS was able to secure 100 digital devices for 5 community centers, Alma, Seven Trees, Mayfair, Roosevelt, and Alum Rock, where young people and older adults experience digital inequities. PRNS is also partnering with Somos Mayfair and UACI to engage diverse communities, particularly youth and older adults. PRNS is also working with internal staff and diverse partners to expand participation to achieve digital inclusion and literacy in communities experiencing digital inequities. And as many have said before, prior to COVID-19, we had a number of plans set for digital inclusion and literacy, but we've had to pivot slightly. And so the plan is to distribute the 100 devices as we had initially intended to our community centers. We are looking to partner with the library to replicate their program, to loan out the digital devices to youth and older adults to ensure that they are connected in the community. Thank you.
Do you want to go back? There we go. Sorry, I was a little slow on the unmuting. I apologize. Nicole Burnham, Deputy Director of Capital Programs for the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. So my team has been working with Laura and the Recreation Neighborhood Services group to support implementation of expanded internet service in our community centers, as well as expanded Wi-Fi. And we've been working through this with support of the digital literacy branch of the EOC, which includes some of our folks from the library, and also the RNS staff. So we kind of put this into 2 buckets, right, where we've been working on within our community center facilities themselves, expanding our internet service into the buildings. Some of our buildings had the low capacity internet service down as low as 20 megabits per second, which makes it a challenge to have a lot of people on Wi-Fi. So we have been upgrading everywhere we can to 1 gigabit service. We already had that at Berryessa and Roosevelt. We're proceeding with Southside and Willow Glen and are evaluating Bascom, Gardner, and Evergreen also for evaluation of upgrade of internet speed. That's allowed us to expand our Wi-Fi coverage within those buildings to support the learning pods and work that Laura and her team is doing. It'll also allow us to expand outdoor Wi-Fi coverage. One of the challenges we've had is expanding outdoor Wi-Fi is only as good as the access we have into the buildings and the speed of our Wi-Fi or speed of our internet access in the building. So utilizing CARES Act funding and AT&T, the AT&T partnerships, the digital inclusion branch has been coordinating expanded outdoor Wi-Fi access with and prioritizing this among our facilities through an equity lens based on the number of people in various households, percent of households with no internet service, percent of households without computers, average household size, population density, and the like. So we will continue this work, working to upgrade all of the community centers and the neighborhood partner centers as well, to get the highest level of service that we can, both inside in the building as well as outside. And with that, I think I turn it back to library.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Hap Yielding. I'm the IT manager for San Jose Public Library. You can see the total number of computer sessions for fiscal year 1920 are at approximately 625,000, trending towards our annual average of about 1 million computer sessions. But that means that approximately 300,000 sessions were missing due to the shelter in place. These are at least part of what we're trying to replace with remote program services and device lending. Regarding our wireless connectivity, the 330,000 individual wireless sessions, detailed numbers for those were also in the memo. So you may have noticed that the numbers weren't zero for months following our COVID closure. Our Wi-Fi actually remains active 24/7 and is available in some areas surrounding the library. It's clear that our customers continue to utilize our Wi-Fi services after the closure. And in a very real way, they were telling us what they wanted. So in conjunction with PRNS, EOC, CMO, and our management team, we're in the process of enhancing the Wi-Fi services. The plan is to expand Wi-Fi so that it covers more completely our outdoor spaces. We're doing that by installing access points on the roof of 9 of our branches. This expansion will greatly enhance the experience of patrons utilizing our Wi-Fi from public spaces outside the building. In March, we needed to enable staff to work from home. On the infrastructure side of things, that meant designing an enterprise solution for VPN connections. We were already working on that before COVID, so it's a good thing. We used an open source tool called, appropriately enough, OpenVPN. It has allowed staff secure encrypted access to all IT resources in the library's network. We got our VMware and net backup systems upgraded to ensure that critical data and services are reliably available to staff at all times. We also upgraded the phone system at our branches to Verizon's hosted IP Centrex. There's still 5 branches left to do, but we were able to adapt the phone system to serve as call-in lines for express pickup at all locations. We also upgraded our catalog server to the latest version of Sierra. This included an enhanced auto renewal capability that helps eliminate fines during this stressful time. And there's a testing environment now that has allowed us to try enhancements before rolling them out in the production environment, avoiding glitches and complications. To ensure that staff can continue providing excellent programs, Zoom educational licenses were purchased and distributed amongst the branches for use in remote programming. This allows for up to 300 participants and has enhanced features to protect the privacy of our customers. We also purchased 2 webinar licenses with which increased the number of participants to 500. To help facilitate remote programs, our help desk team repurposed over 100 mobile devices in a matter of days to provide staff the ability to work from home. We provided remote support to all staff members to ensure they can smoothly run their remote programs, and so far, so good.
Thank you, Hap. We also wanted to bring a brief reminder before the council members that fiscal year 2020-2021 will also see the implementation of the digital literacy quality standards, which were developed by the ad hoc committee last year and were approved by full city council on May 19th of this year. The fiscal year implementation plan includes an assessment of current and future city digital literacy programming by utilizing the quality standards to ensure alignment and adherence for both library and Parks and Rec, and ensuring the implementation of the quality standards through any new programs funded by the Digital Inclusion Fund grant program, which will provide digital literacy instruction, devices, Wi-Fi access, affordable internet service enrollment information, and support to families and seniors experiencing digital inequities. And with that, I will now turn it back to Jill.
Thank you, guys. So in the area of digital inclusion, as you know, we've been working on the digital inclusion branch for the Emergency Operations Center, and the City Council approved the digital inclusion expenditure plan in June of this year. And then approximately 8,300 hotspots were distributed to schools for distribution to student households in early August under this umbrella of SJ Access. So I think I updated you at council recently that during the first few weeks of the various school districts' academic year, many of the districts determined that their need for hotspots was greater than they had anticipated. In some cases, there were new needs reported. In some cases, other solutions that they had explored were less effective. And so we've been working with them closely to understand their full need. And then to address this, we quickly pivoted first by reallocating many of the hotspots that had originally been designated for public use through the library and partner programs for lending to non-student households. We held on to those so that we could pilot lending to student households while we look for a longer-term solution. And then secondly, compiling resources and facilitating a second order through the AT&T partnership for more hotspots. So we do anticipate that these new hotspots will be available to schools by the last week of September and the first week of October. So that's very good news. And but this work with the schools did delay us a bit in initiating the distribution of hotspots for the public through our partner agencies. And now we're full steam ahead on that process, and we're putting together the plans by location. We'll be able to share that information with each of you soon. In addition, the schedules for implementing outdoor Wi-Fi at city facilities are moving forward, and the RFP processes for Access Eastside Community Wi-Fi program is also advancing, and we plan to have a full update on those for City Council at the September 22nd City Council meeting. And with that, I know that John Cicerelli from the PRNS department and I and our wonderful, fabulous team are all here to answer your questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We can tell that with the multiple presenters that these efforts are braided through, and I'm sure that our community feels them as seamlessly as possible, because I can appreciate all the cooperation you all have together. So I'm going to go to public comment first before I look to my council colleagues. Mr. Beekman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for being able to respond. Happy Thursday. To speak on this item, I suppose, I should give it my usual, my regular, my hopes, my dreams. For as much as you're building a digital inclusion future for local communities and especially East Side, I think it has to be important that you talk to the school children about the ideas of what accountability for digital inclusion means and what the accountability for the technology means. And that's like part of the important lessons of this whole process we're learning about and going through together at this time. and what is openness with technology? What are the guideline process that creates public policy practices? What can be good open public policy practices? To explain that to kids, you know, and in the process of this entire digital inclusion process, that's what's inclusive. And, you know, we have, you know, and how we just, I don't know, resolve ourselves to what we're doing, basically, because we're in a big experiment again with our lives to see how, if this sort of program can work. And there's, you know, there's important issues at stake. The West Side actually needs digital help too, I've heard. And, but you know, I understand the points of the arguments for the digital inclusion issue, and I just hope you include open public policy ideas as part of that digital inclusion process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. And next we have Tony, I think I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time looking at my panel list. Oh, we have our school board member, one of the school board members who initiated and prompted us to relook at our digital inclusion, Trustee Chavez.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for the time. Lorena Chavez, Eastside Union High School District Trustee and co-founder of the Digital Equity Coalition. First off, I just want to say thank you so much for everything that y'all are doing. It is very clear that a lot of progress has been made throughout the city in different areas. So I want to appreciate the work. Jill, I know your team really took a load sometime in this to take on this project. Council members, thank you for your ongoing collaboration and advocacy. I specifically am calling in today to inquire about the progress with Eastside Access. Jill, at the end of I heard you say that there is going to be an update September 22nd. And I just want to make sure that if there's anything that we can do as a district to support or engage and make sure that we are on time to getting all of our schools connected, because I think we have like 4 or 5 to go, not including YB, who's already set to be done in December. And as much as possible, try to keep it in one phase because the issue had been the amount of time that it has taken to get schools to get connected. And I know Eastside is ready to engage and we haven't heard anything in terms of what we can do as a district. And so just wanted to offer the support and I was hoping to get a little bit more progress updates on what is happening because I think the RFP was going to be presented soon so that we know what the timeline is. And again, hoping it's one phase versus multiple phases.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Chavez. This is an opportunity for us to hear from our public. And so after public comment, I will ask the question from our staff. In the meantime, please hang in there to hear the response. And next, I will call on caller with the phone number starting at 408-373.
No, don't say the whole, I'm sorry to interrupt. Don't say the whole number.
Just no, I wasn't going to say the whole thing. I was just going to say the first 3 numbers.
Do the last 4 because a lot of people will start with 1408. So do the last 4 digits.
Oh, well, I'm going to say the first 3 because that's what I've already said.
Exactly.
I don't want to reveal the whole thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so telephone starting with the 373. If you have a phone number starting with the numbers 373, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, okay. It's great that you're doing all this digital things with kids. And it's wonderful that you're doing it. But as a taxpayer, people have to start affording their own things. And if you're going to give it away to these children and their parents, you should let them know where it came from. That it's not free; it's paid for by the taxpayer. And I think it's very arrogant. I mean, I think people that work for the government just think that there's just a never-ending amount of money, and that as they give it away, they're the heroes. But that money came from somewhere, and I don't think that this city council cares less about a taxpayer. You guys never disapprove anything. I pay a bundle for the internet where I live, and we don't even get fiber optic because, well, we always get the worst utilities in this city. And by the way, speaking of terrible things, the Zoom that you guys try to provide is awful. I called in the 800 number right now, and it was a pile of crap. I had to use a 213 area code number that Tony Tabor has given me. When I called in the 88 number, it just rang directly in. So I mean, you guys are going to give away free internet. You better fix what you guys have there that involves technology. And once again, let the children know where these free things come from. Let them know it's not free. The money just doesn't fall from the sky. And I think it's ridiculous what kind of money that this city spends on things, including the new BMW motorcycle for the San Jose PD to revenue people and hand out tickets. This city is disgusting, and you guys need to get your act together.
Thank you, sir. And I believe, Tony, I think if we can mute that number, I believe somebody by the name of Karina had raised his or her hand. Are you still interested in speaking?
Yeah, this is Tony. She did lower her hand.
Okay.
So she's still there, but she lowered her hand.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. Sometimes my mouse does all kinds of crazy things when I'm on Zoom.
I have clicked allow to talk, which will give her a little notice that she's ready. So if she wants to speak, she can unmute.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tony. So Karina, if you are still interested in speaking, we are here to hear you. Otherwise, we will move on back to the committee. All right, I'm going to take that as a no. So going back to our committee, let me see our Councilmember Esparza.
Thank you. I had a question. So first off, thank you. Pardon me? Oh, is someone not muted? Okay. So first off, thank you for all the hard work that has gotten to this point. Councilmember Arenas Carrasco and I were with Supervisor Cindy Chavez at the Franklin McKinley School District the day they got 500 hotspots. And they actually were sort of packaging them and getting them organized and started getting them out to families the next day. And so it's really appreciated. And just to clarify, the Wi-Fi work is paid by taxpayers. It's paid by East Side taxpayers who voted on an East Side Union High School District bond. So East Side residents overwhelmingly voted to tax themselves to pay for technology for a community that they know needs it. And fortunately, we are able to use the CARES Act for a lot of these devices to address the inequities now that schools are going online. So I wanted to ask a question about the laptop checkout pilot. Previously, Seven Trees was on the list for device checkout pilot. Seven Trees is in one of the city's poorest areas, and it next to Andrew Hill High School, Sylvandale Middle School, a rocket ship Spark, and 2 elementary schools. So there's definitely the community that could benefit from the laptop checkout pilot. What is the status on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember. The Seven Trees Community Center and Library has been utilized by the city for other emergency response efforts. And so we had not rolled out express checkout at that location yet, but it is planned to roll out on September 28th. And so at that time, we will also be rolling out the express or the checkout of devices, and we're pulling that information together for your office.
Okay. Okay.
So that's why there was, due to the need for programs being distanced and enough PPE, we sort of rolled out the express pickup at locations. We started with less than 10, and we've been adding a few every week. And so that's the delay.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's an extremely needy community in the city. A lot of people see how south it is, but it's still east side, and it's a community that has a lot of challenges. And fortunately, the center is next to a lot of schools, so there's a good synergy there with all the schools nearby. So, okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilmember Jimenez. I know he sent me a message that he was, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask my question now?
Absolutely, please
Okay,
go
sweet.
ahead.
Well, thank you so much for for waiting for me. I had to step away for a moment. So with that, I don't know if my question was asked, so I apologize if it was. And this is for Jill, and I guess, I know you're with the library, obviously, but anyone else with the Parks Department. What I'm wondering is, can you remind me what type of data and information you're capturing with these families we're helping? I'm thinking more along the lines of demographics, income. Like, can you remind me sort of what we're capturing as we help some of these folks?
Yeah, so there's 2 answers really. One is around the Digital Inclusion Fund work, or the Digital Inclusion EOC work, and the Emergency Hotspot Project. And with that, we're working closely with the schools and with partner agencies. And there is an expectation around collecting some data, but it's really around ensuring that the hotspots are getting into the households where they're most needed. So, we worked with the County Office of Ed and the districts to identify that, for instance, the households will be, qualify for free and reduced lunch, be part of some of their special programs for children and households in need, and that sort of thing. We're not collecting necessarily demographic information in that emergency program. And that was because to work closely with the schools, there are a lot of requirements for them around privacy for their students. But that said, the work that you heard about with the digital literacy quality standards that council just approved in May, both departments, that those quality standards do have embedded in them expectations for data collection and reporting. And in that, we have specified for all programs that have quality standards that we get a sense of the location of where folks live, not their address, but the district, the neighborhood, that we collect data whenever possible by gender, race, by grade level attainment, depending on if it's a reading or a math program or whatever. And that's really to understand the efficacy of the programs, and that we work with the schools to understand, is attending a program at a library actually helping you do better in computer science at school or math? Is it helping with attendance because you're more engaged? So so we do have a certain level of reporting required there. And I think that we have always said we report back mid-year and do an annual report to this committee about whatever data we're able to compile.
Okay. Do you? I'm not sure if that essentially captures some of the work that the Parks Department is doing, but
Oh yeah. Well, the digital literacy quality standards are shared across the departments. But I actually would love to give our partners in PRNS a chance to add anything that I may have left off.
Yes, just as Joe mentioned, we also are adhering to the digital quality standards throughout our digital inclusion and literacy work. And we are also looking at capturing demographic data We have never had a lending library with digital devices, so this is new to us. So we're excited to be partnering with the library. But as part of that process, we will be collecting demographic data, no personal specific information about individuals, but just to have an understanding of who is the population that we're serving. And we'll be able to share that with you in the future.
Is there any data, and this is just to both of you, but is there any data that you think could help us better understand, sort of, disaggregate some of the folks we're touching in this program, and to the extent that could be used to further some of the work in other ways? Is there anything that you wish we could capture that we're not, or that we're prohibited from capturing or using?
No, I think it's an area that we're both interested in exploring further. I think in order to really understand who we're serving, we need to ask those questions, right? And I think building those relationships in the community that allow people to feel comfortable to provide that information is key. And so working with our community center staff and our library staff is really important. Oftentimes people feel a little apprehensive about sharing personal information, even if we assure them 100 times that we're not going to share their names or addresses. It's just the climate, and they may have personal reasons for that. And so the more that we can assure people that the information that we are collecting and gathering from all the participants that we serve is really to ensure that we're providing the services that they need, and really to ensure that we're providing high quality services. So it's always one of those things that's difficult to do, because you have to really develop and strengthen those rapports in the community. But once you do, then you can really understand a little more about who is the population that we're serving.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add to that, and so one of the things that we've talked about was that having the ability to check out devices now that go into a person's home actually gives us a way to reach folks with programs that in the past we would just open our doors and serve whoever came to us. And so it gives us the opportunity to really target youth, for instance, with our Coding 5K program, or with the AT&T Tech for Good program, that we could really target folks that are new to the technology perhaps and could really benefit from those programs. So to answer, part of your question, one of the challenges has been that while we locate programs in specific neighborhoods, we don't necessarily turn people away if they came from a different neighborhood, right? And so we've always been trying to put the services where they could be used by the local families. And yet folks come from all over the city to utilize our services.
Which I think is a good thing. And I think that's a good sort of way to approach it, right? Turn no one away. I guess, for example, using the Coding 5K as an example, when kids or whomever participate in that, is that one of the programs in which we collect some of this demographic data and some of this information, right? That would fall under.
We are working to do that, and to also work with our school districts to, whenever possible, to get aggregated data, so that we can understand the impact again of attending a program and what does that mean for the schools. We did a pilot with our SJ Learns programming, where we were able to show by how does the program successful for by genders. Do girls do better in school than boys? Do boys do better in some things than girls? And in one program we found that for the most part everybody was building on their skills, but there was one subset that really needed more support, and so that data allowed us to see that.
So Jill, just so I hate to we sometimes hear that language matters, right? And so I as you're talking, when you say we I think I'm trying to remember the exact word you use, but I think the word was something along the lines, we're trying to capture that data, I think is what I heard. So is that to say that we're currently not doing it, but we're aspiring to do it? Is there like a mechanism in place at the beginning when I, as a kid, come in and say, I want to participate in Coding 5K, here's my information, I'm capturing it then? Or because it seems a little fuzzy to me.
And thank you for pointing that out. I would say the only thing that's fuzzy is that I think if Laura said before that we are not in the habit of forcing people to give us that information to allow them to participate in our programs, especially children. So if there are cases where people don't want to provide that information, we would not, we wouldn't necessarily require it, but we are trying to build every system possible to gather it so that we can analyze the impacts of our program.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of what comes to mind when I'm asking these questions, and I'll tell you why I'm asking it. But what comes to mind for me is, like, for example, and I think it's wonderful, by the way. Let me just preface my statement with this. I think it's wonderful that, for example, it seems to me, and it's probably an overgeneralization, but it seems to me that in the Indian community, for example, they really take advantage of a lot of these technology programs. And, I've seen it out in the community, and so I think that's great. I think it's wonderful. I often, having kids of my own, being Latino, I often tell myself, I wish more Latino kids would participate in some of these programs, right? And so some of the information that comes to mind for me is like, I want to know, like, are there, out of the 100 kids that are participating, are 80 of the kids Indian and 20 of the kids Latino? And then why is that the case, right? And so those are the reasons I'm asking that, because those are the things that come to mind for me sometimes, and in this particular case. But the reason I'm asking is I know that we as a government the city of San Jose are precluded from using certain data for certain reasons and targeting sort of, there's a lot of legalities around sort of the usage of race and things of that nature, right? I know there was a very thorough conversation along Prop 16, and hopefully in my mind, the eventual passage of that is going to allow us to use this information a little bit more purposefully. So the reason I'm asking is, I anticipate I hope that's going to pass by the voters, but I don't want to wait till after it passes to start collecting the data, I guess. And my hope is that we're doing everything possible, recognizing that there's challenges in the immigrant community and other folks that are reticent to give out their information, but that we're doing everything possible, being as creative as possible to capture this data. So that way, when we can flip that switch on and we're able to use this data to focus more concretely in certain areas and on certain people, that we're able to use it then. And so that's the reason I'm asking. I'm just hoping that we're, given some of the roadblocks and challenges, that we're doing everything we can now in anticipation of that passage. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. But if it passes, as a city, I think it's going to be important for us to be ready to go, flip the switch, use that data, and then start moving some of these things forward in a much more meaningful way, it seems to me. So that's the reason I'm asking.
Yeah, and if I seemed fuzzy at all, it's just because just the acknowledgement that it's not a perfect science or a perfect system, but that especially with these programs that are tied with the education policy, if you recall, one of the things that we've always spoken very openly about is the connection back to what I think was originally came to council in terms of the My Brother's Keeper initiative, and that tracking race is an incredibly important part of just understanding how programs are supporting and helping our students succeed, and where to target resources where we see if some group is not succeeding or is not getting access, that data just allows us to be informed so that we can make those kinds of decisions. And so we're very open that has been our goal, is to collect that information, because it is incredibly important, as you said.
And I know that some folks are maybe have some concerns about sharing it, but for example, I would hope, and there may be sort of other thoughts on this, I imagine, but I would hope, for example, there's a person an employee from the library or from the Parks Department sitting at a table, family comes up, maybe they're reluctant to provide that information, but the person taking the application hears the mom and the kid speaking Spanish. I would like to think that our staff is going to go, okay, Spanish speakers or Latino, whatever it may be, Salvadorian, Mexican, whatever. But I don't know if we're able to take those type of proactive steps, but I think it requires that type of initiative to really try to do everything we can to capture some of that, even though it may be imperfect at times, I imagine. But anyway, I thought it was important enough to mention, and I really appreciate your efforts. I know it's not easy, and I was thinking about the right word to use when I said fuzzy, But because I sense some not hesitation, but you know what I mean? Because I know it's not perfect, right? And I think yeah, I commend you on everything you're doing. But I just thought I would ask that question because I think it's important that we have a very clear road ahead on how we're going to address some of this stuff going forward. And I think you're doing a great job. I just always think there's ways to better incorporate some of the folks that are left out on the sideline, not participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Seeing that there's no more hands, and Council Member Sparks, I think that's a hand that was left over from.
Yeah, that's an old one. I'll lower
Okay.
it. Thank you.
I just don't want to skip you. I appreciate the conversation, and actually, I'll start where Councilmember Jimenez left off in terms of race, because there was a question for me and about how you're integrating your diversity and equity manager that we got to meet actually during our last NSC meeting, and which was a really nice surprise. And in our last NSC meeting, we had a lot of questions about how do we, what are the strategies there's life during COVID, pre-COVID, and I'm sure there's going to be life post-COVID, right? And so I think the strategies that we use now may not make sense post-COVID, but there certainly need to be more effective, and we just need to shift. You are all doing that marvelously. And I know that in our GARE process and during our budget process, we had a report from the city manager stating that we weren't collecting information throughout any of our city departments based on race. That was one of the items that was really missing from what we do as city departments, and something that we needed to shift in order to be on track with the GARE process. And so I'm glad you brought this up, Councilmember Jimenez, because that was going to be that's actually one of my questions. And how, in terms of moving with the GARE process, how are you integrating that diversity and equity manager to make sure that hard to reach populations that are typically pre-COVID hard to reach, and now in the middle of COVID, even more difficult. And not only that, but that some of our family demographics are changing, that the folks who might have been middle class are maybe right now really struggling and hanging on by a thread. And so they may not have qualified for the lunch programs, but now they do. And so it would be great to hear just your perspective as you both integrate, from the PRNS department and the library department, how you are all using that criteria to move our programs forward and to focus on these harder reach communities.
Well, I'll go first, but I know that PRNS has really great strategies that they've always used to reach their communities, and so they're employing those. So with our new manager, Carla Alvarez, I'm glad that you were able to meet her. She's actually been she started in February, and then in March we had COVID, as you know. And so she, while we've done some work internally as an organization, she's been embedded in the digital inclusion team. And I think one of the greatest strategies that actually, I think you had suggested it, Chair Arenas, because we're working closely to identify community groups that have trusted relationships with the community members and households and neighborhoods that are more likely to be less connected or more likely to, like you've said, harder to reach. And so we're working with a number of community groups and trying to spread that, the resources we have as far as possible to move forward with that part of the digital inclusion plan and really build on the trusting relationships that they have with their communities, as well as programs that the library already has with some of our communities through our family learning centers, our adult literacy programs, those types of things. And I believe also PRNS is doing similarly with some of their programs where they already have trusting relationships. I don't know if Laura.
Yes, I just want to add, with Parks, I just want to add that we have our senior nutrition program, which serves hundreds of older adults who are getting by check, who come to our community centers daily for food, and they rely on that. So that's a population that we connect with on a daily basis and could easily continue to engage them in the digital inclusion work. We also have our ACES program, our after school programs, that we're also connected with all the different school districts as well as previous participants, and then our number of after school and leisure programs and camps. We serve, as you know already, many youth through our community centers with scholarships because they have challenges being able to participate if we didn't cover their fees. And so fortunately, we have many connections in the community through our staff, our very diverse staff who can speak the language of the children and the families that they serve, as well as like with the library, we have many partnerships in the community. Everything, as I mentioned before, like Somos Mayfair and Aki and all those other organizations who are also trusted organizations in the community that we really look to and support in this work. We're also a grantee, as I mentioned before, with the California Emerging Technology Fund, which is serving thousands of individuals in the community through the 20+ organizations that are funded to do exactly what you had mentioned, Councilmember Rennes, to really target those communities that are not connected, that are not connected to the number of resources in the community. And so we're there in partnership with all of those organizations to be able to do that, to be able to connect and really strengthen those partnerships.
I appreciate that, and I think together that's very thorough. It would be wonderful to have a standard in the same sense that we have quality standards for many of our programs, that we have a certain level of quality standards or approaches or strategies during COVID that we enact and really make sure to check off that list. Because normally we just do our work and allow for that to roll out the way it normally does. But I think right now we need to be very intentional about doing and strategizing very differently. And so it would be wonderful to see more of a standardized approach that both the library and PRNS would consider, and or integrated, with what you mentioned, Laura, and then what you mentioned, Jill, and together you cover seniors, you cover established relationships and people who already are in the neighborhoods, Jill, and that way we know that we're covering the whole spectrum. I know it's impossible for us to reach each and every person, but our intention is to actually do it. Now, whether it works or not, it's part of this trial and error. I never lived through a pandemic. I don't know if you all, I'm sure you haven't, and none of you are old enough to have lived through the last one. And so this is all new for all of us, and we want to make sure, I just want to make sure that our strategies are changing, because I certainly can see that in my office, what works for a period of time, all of a sudden isn't working anymore. People maybe not reading our newsletters as often as they were. At the beginning, they were hanging on to every piece of information that was coming up because people were earnest for that type of information. And now we have to change things a little bit. Maybe you have to pick up the phone a little more often, or we have to possibly make a visit at the park and bring people in a socially distant manner, of course. So I know that we are evolving with the times and with the needs of our community. I just want to make sure that those strategies reflect that. So it would be wonderful to see as we get into the second, or not the second, but as we roll out and begin the new 5K coding or the other programs. I know there was another program that I think was a pilot, in the Wonder Workshop pilot, and just to build those into those programs. As of now, I can appreciate that we have distributed already some iPads, and I can't remember, I think it was you, Jill, or somebody on your staff that said, you know, we're following up with the folks that we already know are struggling. So obviously, you know, this is already identified folks, and which is great. I also think that the schools are distributing devices that are needed, and those are folks that we are not seeing, right? Because they've already received a device or they've already received a hotspot. And so those are folks that we probably won't be able to touch because they're not in our database or they're not receiving our newsletters. And just how do we expand that is my question at the moment, so that we make sure that all of our kiddos are getting a piece of the pie, a very, very small pie that we have, but they're getting part of it. So I appreciate your consideration of that and potential integration into your strategies from here forward. Along the same lines, I was wondering what the coordination between SCOE, the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and the City of San Jose has been in our rollout of devices. You know, we intended to have the same amount of hotspots as we did devices, not entirely because we knew that those users would be missing both items. We thought maybe they would be missing both items, but I'm guessing the rollout is slightly different. How are we coordinating with that? And is that coordination reflected in some sort of MOU so that we can then check our progress against?
Yes, thank you for the question. We have, it seems like we have so many MOUs through the county office now. Basically, they are a partner in pretty much every agreement with each district that has been created to distribute the hotspots. And at the same time, as you know, the city allocated funding through the Digital Inclusion Fund emergency donations through this County Office of Ed to specific schools that were donor designated. And then there was other funding that came through other sources. And then the county allocated about $7.1 million for devices. And a big chunk of that is going to San Jose schools. So far, all of that funding that we've worked with them, and then the funding from the county, this County Office of Ed has been coordinating with us to keep us apprised of the devices that they are purchasing to fill that need so that we could pair or meet the need for both. Because I will say the one really good thing about the hotspot that we were able to distribute is that it can support several devices. So if you have siblings in different classes, the feedback we're getting is that a very low percentage are having issues with that device. And that's great, right? Because that could also perhaps support the parent, it could support others in the household. So we need more devices than hotspots at this point. And the challenge for the county office as of last week when I last spoke with the superintendent was that there has been a back order on ordering new devices. And so they were going to give us an update on how much they were able to get. And they give us weekly updates on the total needed for all the districts that serve San Jose. And our hope had been to, get all of our hotspots distributed and then refocus on the devices. And so we'll be able to give you a clear number very soon at an upcoming update or anytime.
Wonderful. That was going to be my next question in terms of distribution. I think we've asked this in our COVID update about 2 weeks ago. Some of us were interested in learning about, what are the school districts and what did they receive, and hopefully that matches up. I'm almost certain that it would match up with. I think that's a little like a pet squeaky or something that I'm hearing.
Oh, sorry, it's my puppy. I didn't even realize.
It's absolutely adorable. Makes me think about a baby. Puts a smile on my face. That is absolutely cute. Now this is what we're dealing with when we work at home. So absolutely enjoyable. So yeah, that would be wonderful to learn a little bit more in terms of the distribution. I know you have a second order that's coming up in late September or early October, and hopefully we'll get folks what they need. My question was going to be around this is Alum Rock receiving any additional hotspots at this point, or are they pretty much set?
Sorry, I was muted. I will check really quick to see if, but they did get a very large order the first time around. So we'll see if they made a secondary request. The good news about the second order is that we were able to meet every request that's been made to us.
Wonderful. Thank you. I can see the benefit already when I look at my kiddos' kinder class and everybody's in their little respective corner or kitchen or somewhere in their home, or actually there's a number of kids who are on site at one of our schools doing distance learning, or we're all trying to do that. So I appreciate it. And I just wanted to relay that, that is, your work is really paying off. We can see that in our classrooms already. So I think my next question was about the connecting households. I think I saw in the report that in May 2020, there was effort to help enroll families into affordable internet services, and there was about 3,000 households that were provided information, but there was only 44 households that actually moved forward with an application or enrollment for affordable internet service. Is that typically what you see? Is that what those efforts typically render?
Yes, so that was under Parks and Rec. So as we mentioned, we did this mass outreach, and we had about 45 families that took us up on the offer to assist them through the application process. The application process is a little bit cumbersome because the families, the households have to have documentation, and you have to scan it, you have to upload it. And so for some of the families, that was a challenge when they came to the enrollment date. If they had the forms, we were able to assist them. We were able to either take pictures of it or scan it on the computer and assist them. But there's also different criterias for the affordable internet service. For example, if there's multiple households or multiple family units within a home, let's just say you have 4 families living together and one of them has affordable internet service, the other residents can't obtain it. Or if the family maybe had the affordable internet service with a company and they have a balance that they never paid, they can't enroll. And so there's all these little criterias that also unfortunately serve as a roadblock and barriers for families accessing. And then again, the reality is that $10 may not seem a lot to many of us, but when you have families who, as we know, have especially during this time, are unemployed or not working as many hours as they used to, having $10, you have to kind of pick and choose what necessities you want to pay for. So unfortunately, yes, there's just a number of challenges and barriers. And so these hotspots are a godsend to many families that I know that wouldn't have access to the internet services.
Sure, I appreciate that. I think now that we're having more of our families familiar with a hotspot, I'll be honest, I don't know how the hotspot works. I just have my internet, and my husband puts his hotspot on in his phone, and I just don't even mess with that. I'm not that tech girl, but I know our families are forced now to really be more used to some of the technology. And so I don't know if maybe you have another rollout for this, or just to spread the word about maybe some of the families that are already using some of our hotspots and our devices, and can actually talk to their neighbors and friends and possibly help out and just alleviate some of the confusion that comes along with the hotspots. If somebody can explain it to me, they can explain it to our families, and maybe we would be more prone to use it, right? And so I just think that we are in a different place at this point. We typically, as parents, we're forced to learn new things through our children, and we're forced in different circles because of our children and their interest. And so I think we should take advantage of maybe some of the folks who are already connected, who can help with some spreading some of that information, because not everybody has a child and who's on distance learning and now getting used to all of this. And so I would venture to say that maybe a second rollout would be better at this point, now that everything's kind of settled from the start of school and we all are getting used to this new way of teaching and being at home.
Yeah, and
So
also
just
one of the things that we've been talking about is that we get the hotspots out. We're still trying to get more devices, but that we have the remainder of this fiscal year to work through the schools and our partners and with the families to sort of increase that number of folks who have found an ongoing internet solution, whether it be through our Access Eastside projects, but to work with our telco agreements to see what happens after this year, which, as Councilmember Esparza said, was funded through CARES funding. So we really need to work with our families. Like, this is a good way to help this year during this really urgent, terrible, distance learning rollout that's been so challenging for families. But we have a longer term solution to find. And also, I wanted to let you know that Alum Rock did not request an additional order of hotspots.
Thank you. Yes, and I, for some reason, I overlooked that list. Your staff did send us a list, our team, a list of school districts with devices that have been allocated so far. And I think at this point, I think there's only been like about 3,000 that have been distributed. And I know that there was a funding for 11,000. Is that because we're finding the difference in pricing different than we expected, or?
Oh, actually, that's a good clarification. That we did distribute 8,300, and we have the remainder of 11,000 to 2,700 to do public checkout and partner checkout. The 3,000 in the list that you have was the schools within your district. So we can provide the full, but it was more answering that direct question.
Yeah, there was Mount Pleasant, Evergreen, Eastside, Alum Rock. For some reason, I have Morgan Hill. We don't stretch down that south, but they feel like our neighbors at times.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Okay, and I want to get back to just the question that Trustee Chavez had in her call, and out of respect of her time and her interest. I know that she was asking about Access Eastside, and now that you bring it up, Jill, I hope that maybe you can just provide a quick response to some of the inquiry that she was making.
Yes, and thank you for asking that. So as we stated last week, the RFP for the consultants that would do the build out closed last Wednesday, I believe. And so the Public Works team is reviewing the RFP responses. And that's why we've scheduled the next update and discussion with full council on the 22nd, because that will give them time to be able to have a more robust conversation. And at that time, we're hoping that the update is mostly about that project, and with an update also on the city building Wi-Fi.
Wonderful, thank you. And I hope, well, I'm sure Lorena also teaches at the same time she works, and teaches at home as well. So hopefully she's getting some of this as she's doing her own work. If not, we can make sure to connect back with her. Thank you for the clarification on the 8,300. I appreciate that. I think those are my questions. I have a question about phase 2, but I think we have the rollout of phase 2. But I think we have an update soon enough about that. And so I can hold off on that. I think overall, I'm absolutely impressed with the variety of programming that are not just intended for our students, but intended for our seniors or adults, like the laptop checkout pilot program that seemed to be more focused for adult use, because our children aren't the only ones that need to get on the internet, right? Everybody does nowadays. And if you didn't have access to transportation and relied on public transportation, this kind of allowance would provide you, avoiding getting on public transportation once again, and then hauling the stroller and the kids and all of that to a clinic. And so now you can do some telehealth appointments, and so that, or job interviews, or whatever it is that we are now relying on the internet for so much. So I appreciate the different program and variety, as well as the infrastructure development. I know that, like I said, I am not sure all of what you did. I heard what you said about some of the improvements. And so all I know is that our internet will be faster for our community, especially at our community centers. I know that it was still a need that is out there, and we've seen it with the numbers of people who continue to rely on the library Wi-Fi. And so I completely appreciate that, and I didn't want to overlook that, Hap, because I know that you're online here with us, and you're possibly somebody that stays behind the scenes, but allows for our parents and our community to stay connected. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for that, and for your efforts to keep us all connected and in the voodoo you do around technology. All right, so that is it for my comments and questions. I appreciate it. I hope that we can have a motion.
Move to approve.
Second. Wonderful. Tony?
Esparza,
Yes.
Foley,
Aye.
Jimenez,
Aye.
Carrasco,
Aye.
Arenas.
Aye.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So that is almost concluding our meeting here. Left is open forum, and I see that we have one person left for public comment. Thank you so much to everybody who's provided some presentations to us. And so I'm going to read off the first 3 numbers, because I did that last time, and this is the same number. So if you have the number 373, if you could please unmute yourself and go ahead and provide us with your public comment. Hi, this is for number 3. If your phone number starts with 373, go ahead and begin your public comment.
And on the phone, press *6 to unmute. Okay, so I'm going to disable his talking, and maybe we'll come back to him after the next speaker.
Perfect. Mr. Beekman, you're next.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to speak a bit more about Dolores Huerta's and Cesar Chavez's work in San Jose. I wanted to use the words, not just activist, but, community organizer and neighborhood organizer. And not just activists, but ideas of advocacy as well. I feel, they've taught me a lot, and they've done it with a lot of comfort and respect, and it's been nice for me. How that, I wanted to then also talk about the police SRO issue and the police need for wanting to be a part of community, the police department. And that, again, just to mention that the PAL idea may be a way to go to relieve the stress of the police wanting to be community minded and oriented as part of the SRO program. With what do I got here? 54 seconds. You know, there's going to be a lot of police items coming up on September 15th. Thank you. I'm learning that, you know, we're learning how to prepare ourselves for the long haul. And it's time we talk about issues of equity and real, you know, decisions to pull back the police, you know, as much as we can, and talk about community policing ideas more. And what does community's involvement mean? We need to be more involved as a community. And to conclude, you know, I'm having a difficult time these days trying to mention how COVID is an international issue and it has international beginnings. How do we talk about that at the local level in terms that can make it safe and we can have our own sense of empowerment and take back what we deserve? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. I'm going back to the caller with the first three.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we are. Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the last, usually you guys use the last three numbers, but whatever. First of all, Zoom doesn't work. This call-in thing is ridiculous. I just had to hear an hour's worth of how people don't have access to the internet. I have access to the internet, but you guys are making it really difficult. I know how to do all this. You're making it difficult to for people to attend these meetings. And I mean, and if they can't afford $10 to have internet, how are they going to be able to get through like I do? Once again, I like to also know who, they don't have $10 to get the internet. Do they have more than $10 worth of tattoos in their family? I bet they do. You know, you don't have $10, you can't live in the Silicon Valley. I mean, I'm sorry, but maybe you have to move someplace else. But, you know, our city likes to spend money on, you know, police dogs that cost tens of thousands of dollars, BMW motorcycles. I guess they can go faster to revenue people who are on their way to work, who maybe are, you know, slightly speeding a little bit, you know, and it's crazy how much money is spent on in this entire city. As far as I'm concerned, all these programs in the police department, the fire department, the whole thing is glorified welfare, whether the people are being paid or not, or getting things for free. It's really disgusting. And this is for Dev Davis. The road at Hicks Avenue there in Calacita is a mess. It's a big mound of tar and a steel plate. It's unsafe. It's disgusting, and you need to fix it. It's dangerous. And if anything, the people in the new BMW motorcycle should cite the people who put the pile of tar that's a complete road hazard. I really think that this city needs to prioritize. And, oh, by the way, PAL, get rid of it. It's highly paid police officers, you know, tweeting whistles and kicking soccer balls.
All right, thank you. And that is the conclusion of our meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.